Augustus Gus Freeman didn't build his empire by luck. He built it by noticing what others missed. At 68, sitting in his penthouse high above rainy Seattle, Gus was a man who saw everything. He read people like he read the financial reports on his desk, quickly, accurately, and without mercy. It was Monday, 3 days before Thanksgiving. The office was quiet, save for the rhythmic drumming of rain against the glass. The door opened. Nia, the young cleaning girl, slipped inside. She was 26 but carried herself like a frightened shadow. Head down, shoulders hunched. Her gray uniform seemed to swallow her small frame. Gus watched her over the rim of his glasses. He noticed the tension in her jaw, the way her eyes darted toward the exit before she even reached his desk. "Coffee, Mr. Freeman," she whispered, her voice trembling. She reached out to place the porcelain cup on his desk. Her hand shook not a little, but violently. As the cup clattered onto the saucer, a sudden crack of thunder shook the building. Nia flinched hard, a reflex of pure terror. In that split second, her sleeve slid up. Gus saw it instantly. Dark, angry purple bruises wrapped around her wrist. They were distinct finger marks. Someone had grabbed her. Hard. "Stop," Gus's voice was low, commanding. Nia froze. Gus reached out, his hand hovering near her wrist. "Who did that to you?" Panic flooded Nia's eyes. She yanked her arm back, pulling the sleeve down desperately. "Nothing. I fell. On my bike. I'm just clumsy." It was a lie. Gus knew the difference between a fall and a grip. He looked into her eyes and saw a woman who was being hunted. "Nia," he started, his tone softening. "I have to work." "I'm sorry," she gasped, backing away. She turned and fled the room, closing the door as if a monster were chasing her. Gus didn't follow. He stared at the closed door, his expression hardening from a businessman to something far more dangerous, the protector he used to be. He picked up his phone and dialed a single number. "Marcus," Gus said, his voice cold as steel. "Come upstairs. Someone hurt the girl. I want to know who, and I want to know now. There are monsters that hide in the dark, and then there are the dangerous ones, the ones that hide in plain sight, camouflaged by a shiny badge and a crisp uniform." 10 minutes after Nia fled the office, Gus stood in the security center of the building. It was a room of humming servers and glowing screens, a stark contrast to his wood-paneled office upstairs. Marcus, his head of security and a former SEAL, typed rapidly on a keyboard. "Got him," Marcus said, his voice flat. "And you're not going to like it, boss." On the main screen, a grainy video feed from a street camera popped up. It was time-stamped yesterday evening, at a bus stop 3 blocks away. It was raining then, just as it was now. Nia was standing under the shelter, shivering. A patrol car pulled up to the curb, tires splashing water onto the sidewalk. The driver got out. He wasn't stopping a crime. He was committing one. "Officer Kyle Rourke," Marcus read from a file. 35. Seattle PD. And Nia's ex-husband. Gus watched the screen in silence. He saw Rourke tower over Nia. He didn't strike her, not with a fist. Instead, he cornered her against the glass of the bus shelter. He used his body to box her in. He leaned down, his face inches from hers, shouting something that made Nia shrink into herself. Then, he raised a finger and poked her hard in the forehead. Once, twice, thrice. Poke, poke, poke. Each jab forced her head back against the glass. It was a display of total dominance. He was reminding her that he could touch her whenever he wanted, and she couldn't do a thing about it. "He's taunting her," Gus murmured, his jaw tightening. "Does she have a restraining order?" "She filed one 3 months ago," Marcus replied, pulling up another document. "But it's useless. Rourke has violated it a dozen times. The local precinct ignores the complaints. His uncle is deputy chief. They protect their own." On the screen, Rourke laughed, a cruel, jagged movement of his jaw before getting back into his cruiser. He drove off, leaving Nia sobbing in the rain. The room was silent, but the air felt heavy, charged with a brewing storm. Gus turned away from the screen. He had seen enough. This wasn't just a domestic dispute. This was a man using the power of the law to break a woman who had no one to defend her. "He thinks he's untouchable," Gus said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. He thinks that badge is a shield that makes him a god. He looked at Marcus, his eyes cold and hard as flint. He's wrong. Show him what happens when he touches someone under my protection. To catch a wild animal, you use a cage. But to catch an arrogant man, you use the very thing he values most, his pride. Tuesday morning. The rain had turned into a steady, freezing drizzle. Inside the penthouse, the atmosphere was suffocating. Nia stood in front of Gus's desk, twisting her hands together so hard her knuckles turned white. She wasn't holding a coffee tray this time. She was holding her resignation letter. "I can't stay," she choked out, tears streaming down her face. "He sent me a message. He knows I work here. He said he'd come and make a scene. I can't bring trouble to your door, Mr. Freeman." Gus didn't touch the letter. He stood up and walked around the massive oak desk. For a man of 68, he moved with the silence of a predator. He stopped in front of her, his presence looming but protective. "Nia," Gus said, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "Look at me." She hesitated, then raised her tear-stained face. "You are not quitting," he stated. "It wasn't a request, it was a fact. And you're not running. Out there you're prey. But in here, under this roof, you are under my protection." "But he has a gun," Nia whispered, trembling. "He has the police. And I have the truth," Gus countered. "And believe me, child, the truth is sharper than any bullet." Behind them, the door opened. Marcus stepped in, holding a tablet. His face was grim but satisfied. "It's done, boss," Marcus said. "The package has been delivered." The package wasn't physical. It was a digital bomb. Overnight, Gus's team had compiled everything. The bank records showing Kyle's $43,000 in illegal shakedowns, the chat logs of him bragging about his untouchable status, and the 4K video of him terrorizing Nia at the bus stop. They hadn't sent it to the local police precinct. They had sent it to the FBI and the biggest news station in Seattle. "The station is airing this segment in 5 minutes, Marcus added. "And the feds are already moving." Nia looked between the two men, confusion warring with a fragile, dawning hope. "Why?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Why would you do this for me?" Gus looked out the window at the gray city below. "Because evil only wins when good men do nothing. And I am done doing nothing." Suddenly, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression tightened. "He saw the promo for the news segment," Marcus said rapidly. "GPS shows Rourke's car moving fast. He's not going to this station. He's coming here. He thinks he can get to Nia before the world falls apart." Nia gasped, backing away. "He's coming." Gus didn't flinch. He walked back to his desk and sat down, calm as the eye of a storm. A cold, terrifying smile touched his lips. "Good," Gus said softly. "Let him come. Open the doors, Marcus. Let's welcome him in." A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. But when the truth strikes with cold, hard evidence, it doesn't run. It destroys. 8 a.m. The news broke like a dam bursting. Inside his personal sedan, parked 2 blocks from the precinct, Officer Kyle Rourke stared at his phone. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so hot it blurred his vision. On the screen, the local news anchor was speaking words that ended careers. "Breaking news, shocking allegations against a Seattle police officer. Sources have provided video evidence of assault and financial records linking Officer Kyle Rourke to organized crime payoffs." Then the video played. The bus stop. The rain. Him. Looming over Nia. The poke. The threat. It was all there, playing on a loop for the entire city to see. His phone buzzed. It was his uncle, the deputy chief. "You're done." His uncle's voice was ice. "Turn in your badge. Don't come to the station. The feds are already here." Click. Kyle stared at the dead phone. He had been untouchable. He was the law. And now, in 5 minutes, he had become a pariah. A criminal. "Nia," he hissed, the name tasting like bile. "She did this. That little, scared mouse of a girl. She must have found someone. She must have sold him out. She ruined his life." He didn't see his own crimes. He only saw her betrayal. He stripped away logic and replaced it with pure, blind malice. He reached into the glove box and pulled out his personal handgun. He checked the clip. Full. "You think you can hide?" he muttered to the empty car. "You think you can take everything from me?" He threw the car into gear, tires screeching on the wet asphalt. He wasn't running away. He was running toward the only thing he had left: revenge. High above the city, in the cool blue light of the security room, Marcus watched a red, moving rapidly across the map. "He's moving fast, boss," Marcus reported. "ETA to the lobby, 4 minutes. He's armed." Gus adjusted his cuffs, his face an unreadable mask of stone. "Let him come," Gus said. "Activate the trap." The arrogant man always makes one fatal mistake. He assumes his prey is weak because it is quiet. He forgets that the lion stalks in silence before it strikes. Kyle's car screeched to a halt in front of the Freeman Tower. He didn't bother to park. He slammed the door, leaving the engine running, and marched through the rain. He was soaking wet, his eyes wild, his hand gripping the gun tucked into his waistband. He burst through the revolving doors into the lobby. It was a cavern of marble and glass, silent and imposing. The receptionist looked up, eyes widening at the sight of the disheveled, armed man. "Nia!" Kyle screamed, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "I know you're in here. Come out." Silence answered him. "You think you can ruin me?" Kyle roared, pacing like a caged animal. "I am the police. Come out, or I start shooting." The elevator doors at the far end of the lobby slid open with a soft chime. Kyle spun around, hand on his gun. Nia stepped out. She looked terrified, but she stood her ground. And she wasn't alone. Gus stood in front of her. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket, just his vest and rolled-up sleeves. He didn't look like a businessman. He looked like a wall. Kyle laughed a manic, broken sound. "You." He sneered, looking at Gus with pure disgust. "Move aside, old man. I don't have time for a janitor playing hero. Give me the girl." "She is not property, boy." Gus's voice was calm, carrying across the lobby without shouting. "And you are trespassing." "Trespassing." Kyle pulled his gun, aiming it squarely at Gus's chest. "I'm the law. Now move, you stupid old." "You were the law," Gus interrupted, his voice turning into a growl. "Now, you're just a man with a gun in a private building." Gus raised his hand, a sharp, cutting motion. Click. Instantly, floodlights from the mezzanine level blinded Kyle. "Drop it!" A voice boomed from the shadows. Kyle squinted against the glare. As his eyes adjusted, his face went pale. It wasn't private security. It was a SWAT team. And standing next to them were 2 federal agents. "Kyle Rourke," the lead agent shouted. "Federal agents. Drop the weapon. Now." Kyle froze. The gun felt heavy in his hand. He looked at Gus, then at the agents, then back at Gus. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The old janitor he had dismissed, he wasn't just protecting Nia. He had summoned the FBI. "Who are you?" Kyle whispered, his arrogance shattering. Gus took a step forward, shielding Nia completely. "I'm the man who owns this building. I'm the man who pays the taxes that bought your uniform. And I'm the man who just ended your career." Kyle's hand dropped. The gun clattered to the marble floor. Before he could take a breath, 3 officers tackled him. His face was pressed against the cold stone, handcuffs clicking shut on his wrists. The same wrists he had used to bruise Nia were now bound by the justice he had mocked. Gus looked down at Kyle, who was now just a wet, pathetic figure on the floor. "Get him out of my lobby," Gus said dismissively. "He's staining the floor." The storm had passed. The rain that had battered Seattle for weeks finally broke, leaving behind a sky of crisp, piercing blue. It was Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. Gus stood in the center of a sunlit living room in the quiet, upscale neighborhood of Queen Anne. The apartment smelled of fresh paint and possibilities. Beside him stood Nia. She wasn't wearing her gray uniform. She was wearing a simple coat, her eyes wide as she took in the view of the Space Needle through the large windows. "Mr. Freeman," she whispered, afraid to touch anything. "I don't understand. Whose apartment is this?" Gus reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of silver keys. He held them out to her. Yours, he said simply. The lease is paid for 2 years. The building has 24-hour security. No one gets in unless you buzz them in. Nia stepped back, shaking her head. I can't. This is too much. I can't pay you back. I didn't ask for payment, Gus replied. He walked over to the kitchen counter and picked up a thick manila envelope. And this, is for your future. He handed her the envelope. Inside wasn't cash. It was an acceptance letter from the Seattle Nursing College, along with a scholarship confirmation. Nia stared at the paper. Her hands trembled, but this time, it wasn't from fear. How did you know? I only mentioned wanting to be a nurse once, months ago. I listen, Gus said, a rare, genuine warmth softening his eyes. You spent months bringing me coffee, asking about my day, treating an old man with kindness when everyone else just saw a checkbook. You have a healer's heart, Nia. It was a waste to let it break under a bully's fist. Tears spilled down Nia's cheeks. For the first time in years, she wasn't crying because she was hurt. She was crying because she was free. Why, she choked out. Gus adjusted his hat, preparing to leave. Because the world is full of people who judge by appearances. They looked at you and saw a victim. They looked at me and saw a retired relic. We proved them wrong. Nia didn't speak. She surged forward and wrapped her arms around him. It was awkward at first, then tight. A desperate, grateful embrace. Gus stiffened, not used to being touched, but then slowly, he patted her back. Happy Thanksgiving, Nia, he murmured. As Gus walked out to his waiting car, he looked back up at the window. He saw Nia standing there, bathed in the morning sunlight, looking out at the city she no longer had to fear. Augustus Freeman was a man of shadows. But today he had brought a little bit of light. In a city of cold rain and colder hearts, Augustus Freeman proved that true power isn't about how loud you roar, but how fiercely you protect the vulnerable. Nia's journey from the shadows into the light reminds us that sometimes the helping hand we need comes from the most unexpected place. So, never judge a book by its worn cover, for true kindness often wears a humble disguise. If this story warmed your heart, share it with someone who needs a little light today.